Ladies and gents, boys and girls, welcome Friday, December the 22nd, 2023. Hope you are all doing well. Chris Phillips here, your host of the Daily Crow of the Spurs Up Show. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. I see Rebecca, Ethan K, Jacob, Travi, John Edward. What's going on? Xavier M as well. Also those in the Big Cock Club Discord, head over to the TDC Questions channel. The TDC Questions channel. Be sure your questions are answered there. I see our good friend Chase Youngblood in the TDC Questions channel. Appreciate you, my friend, for tuning in. Again, guys, I got a jam-packed show today. Lots to get into. We are going to kick things off here in a few minutes. Our good friend Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14. He will join the show. Those guys do a great job talking all things SEC. We're going to talk some men's basketball, believe it or not, guys. Have not spent a lot of time talking basketball, but conference play just around the corner. And certainly as we navigate through non-conference, we're about 12 games in or so. There's a lot of action to break down, a lot of teams to discuss, a lot of storylines to talk about that are happening in the SEC. So Blake is going to help us do that here in a couple minutes, guys. We're also talking Rose Bowl, Alabama, and Michigan. I'll give my full preview and prediction. Also, guys, in the spirit of Christmas, we'll talk what each SEC fan base is asking for Christmas on December the 25th. Our daily mailbag segment, taking your questions, your comments, your voicemails, and a big announcement upcoming later in the show, guys, last 15 or 20 minutes or so. So stick around for that. But in the meantime, guys, we're rocking and rolling as normal. We are live noon to 2 today and every day. Be sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Hit that bell icon, guys, so you get notifications of when we go live and we drop new video content as well. Also, guys, you can find the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast, guys. Be sure to check us out there at the Spurs Up Show and follow along on social media. Content bleeding out of the eyeballs there as always. Again, guys, thank you all so much for tuning in. Really excited to chat with you all today. Again, got so much to discuss, so much to get into. Things have already been going crazy this morning with Florida State. Their board of trustees meeting looks like they're going to be trying to get out of the ACC, suing the ACC is what I think I read somewhere. Either way, trying to get that price down to buy their way out of the grant of rights of the ACC, all that mess that is. So, guys, conference realignment talks. I know for some of us it's exhausting and it's not the most fun topic to talk about, but it's certainly in the future. It's not going away anytime soon. I think we could see. Could Florida State be a fit in the SEC? Would the SEC want Florida State, or would they say, you know what? We've already got market share in the state of Florida with the Florida Gators. We don't need FSU. We don't need Miami. We don't need anybody else that the ACC could send over. So, again, guys, it's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds. It's just crazy to think about where college football and college sports was just, say, 10 years ago, and how much different it looks now and how much different it's going to look 10 years from now, right? It's just crazy to think about how the landscape is ever changing, but that is true. The landscape is ever changing, and you either adapt or die, not just in college football, but in life as well. So, really interesting stuff, guys. Again, appreciate you all tuning in. Like I mentioned, jam-packed show. Guys, something I realized, by the way, I should have broke down the Texas and Oklahoma bowl games also, because, of course, they're already basically members of the SEC at this point. We will do that next week, and more on that later in the show, but we will do that next week because I certainly want to talk about, especially Texas, who's in the college football playoff, taking on Washington, and then Oklahoma in their bowl game as well. We'll break them down next week also, so again, stay tuned. Details coming on that later in the show. But again, guys, like I mentioned, we've spent so much time this month talking SEC football, very, very little talking college basketball with going through non-conference, but don't look now. Conference play is just around the corner. To help us break it all down, guys, he's one of the best in the business, talks all things SEC basketball, our good friend Blake Lovell, Southeastern 14. He joins the show. Blake, what's going on, my man? Great to chat with you. An early Merry Christmas to you and yours, my friend.
Yes, you as well, Chris. Good to talk to you. I know it's been a while since we've caught up. We saw each other at SEC Football Media Day, which seems like forever ago now. But yeah, it's fun to kind of get into this time of year in both basketball and football season. So yeah, exciting time. So
Blake, let's start with this. I know that right now for a lot of people, it's really, really tough to take the attention away from football and really dive into basketball, especially when we're talking about non-conference games. Let's play a game, Blake. Let's pretend you're talking to someone who has not watched 1 second of SEC basketball to this point. What's the one thing? What's the thing that you would tell them that you feel like they need to know if they were asking Blake? Tell me what's happened in SEC basketball to this point. What's been the biggest thing that's jumped out to you that you feel like has stood out the most, if you will?
the thing I would probably say is I think that the SEC has probably the best chance it's had in a while to kind of get as many teams in the NCAA tournament that I think there's a good chance that it will get. But you can look around at all the bracketologies, which everybody knows I make fun of my December bracketologies, which don't really mean anything this time of year. But you can look around and understand that there is a possibility, at least to this point, that the SEC can get 9 teams into the tournament. I think. And look, the reason for that, obviously, South Carolina is one of the reasons for it. Ole Miss is the other, just based on those have kind of been the two surprise teams at this point. And so I think that's probably the biggest headline is that it feels like, and I say that to tell you that it feels like the SEC has been a little bit disappointing in non conference play, but yet they've done enough to where I think there are probably 9 teams that have a legitimate chance to make the NCAA tournament. Maybe teams 10 or 11 right now would even say we feel like we've got a shot too. But I think we're starting to see the overall strength of the league. And I think something else, Chris, that I would put in there too is keep in mind we've seen a lot of teams so far that haven't been at full strength, whether it's due to the transfers sitting out until now, whether it's due to injuries here or there, that guys are going to be coming back. So yeah, I think the strength of the league is pretty good right now.
Blake, let's stick with the theme of that. Who's a team coming into the season that you felt really good about that at this point now, we sit a couple weeks away from conference play beginning. Who's a team that you felt really good about that now you find yourself, you have a little bit more questions than you once did? And who's a team that maybe you weren't talking about as much or thinking that highly of that has impressed you the most that you think could realistically take what they've done in non conference play and transition that into making some noise once SEC play begins?
I mean, Arkansas is the slam dunk easiest possible answer I could give to anybody on the team that's probably been the most disappointing. And I think talking to my colleague Max Barr, he brought it up this morning. The word is perfect. Like they're just confusing. Like I don't know what to expect from Arkansas at this point. They played 12 games. Um, usually we're used to in Muss's tenure there they usually start hitting that bump like this time of year. But they
Mhm.
started it so early this year where they lost the game to Greensboro back in November. They just haven't played well, really outside the Duke game. Like you could look at the majority of their games, even in the games they've won, they've not been great. You could look at the last two as an example of that against Lipscomb and Abilene Christian. So they're a top 3 team in the SEC, in my opinion, coming into the season. Now, I just don't know how you could put them even into the top half right now because I think they've got a lot to figure out in terms of chemistry and the offense and just kind of everything that they're trying to do. It hasn't clicked yet. And you always run into that danger, as you know, Chris. Like anytime you're building a team in this transfer portal era, times the chemistry just doesn't click, period. And, I think right now they're just searching for answers for everybody to try to figure out exactly what they need to do. So I'd put Arkansas as the easy answer for the disappointing one. The surprising one, and of course, it's not just because I'm talking to you, but like I said it and I have repeated it since then. I'm like, there was no one out there that was more convinced that South Carolina was going to be number 14 in the SEC out of 14 teams heading into the season. We all did our Southeastern 14 staff vote heading in. It was consensus. Like we all picked South Carolina 14. And
Mhm.
here they are at 10-1. And, I've seen a lot of people, it's social media. We know how it works, but I've seen a lot of people say, well, their strength of schedule hasn't been the greatest. Some of these games they've won that are close games. I said, yeah, but it's one thing to look at the computers, another thing to look at the team and actually watch them with your eyes. And I mean, to me, they've got gamers. Like they've just got guys who are kind of fearless. And again, the chemistry aspect we talked about that wasn't there for Arkansas. It has been there for South Carolina. And if you're only blemished at this point, it's a 5-point loss to Clemson, where I thought they played pretty well there. Like, that's a loss, but man, I thought there was more good than bad to take away from that game, given what we've seen from Clemson. Yeah, like I think South Carolina's in a great position to make the NCAA tournament. And if we'd have had this same conversation 6 months ago, and we'd have been saying that, we'd been like, what am we even talking about right now? But I've been that impressed with South Carolina to this point. So
Blake, let's stick with South Carolina for a moment because you talked transfer portal earlier, and certainly Lamont Paris's team, a big beneficiary of that. When you look at Talon Cooper from Minnesota, BJ Mack from Wofford, Miles Studi from Vanderbilt. I mean, certainly you look at those contributors and what they're doing, Blake. Also, Jacoby Wright coming off the bench. I mean, they've got dudes. Josh Gray is playing, I think, the best basketball of his career. And again, I think there's a lot of Gamecock fans right now, or a lot of folks in Gamecock circles that are just they're protecting their emotions right now, if you will. They're trying not to get too high because, again, we are in non-conference play. But to your point, the only loss coming against a Clemson team that I think is nearing top 10 status right now. I mean, they're one of the best teams in the ACC. So, I mean, I said this coming in, Blake, that if South Carolina in year two of Lamont Paris, after what year one was, which was a really difficult season, if they could make the NIT, I thought that would be a great step in the right direction and would be positive growth for Lamont Paris's program. Certainly, it sounds like you think they are at minimum capable of doing that.
yeah, I absolutely. And I think, I was just, as you were talking, the thing in my mind is, well, look, here's the deal. Like, their non-conference schedule is not going to do them a lot of favors once they get, into that, where we start. Let's say again, we're in mid-February and they're in a position to be in that conversation to make the NCAA tournament. Well, it's probably going to have to lean on beating some good teams in SEC play. But I mean, South Carolina's been in that position before. And because again, you're always searching for signature wins. And I think the thing is, as we started the conversation, the SEC is going to allow you enough signature win opportunities this season to where, again, you've done the work to this point. Obviously you don't need to slip up and lose to an Elon or Florida A&M or anything like that. But if you just take care of business in those two games, then you get into SEC play. I think you have to feel pretty good about their chances. Again, not just to be an NIT lock type team, but also make the NCAA tournament. And I think it's, the experience factor to me. We always talk about it. Like, think about the conversations we had at the NCAA tournament last year, all about who are these teams that are making these runs. They're teams that are loaded with experience. Maybe guys who haven't played on the same team together a lot, but guys who just played a lot of basketball, and kind of the big four, as I deem them here for South Carolina. Like, they've all played a lot of basketball and important basketball at times, in big conference. So I think it's one of those things where I said it. Ole Miss and South Carolina have been the surprise teams, and I think everybody's just kind of out there waiting for them to fall off. Which, again, it's the SEC. It could happen to anybody, maybe outside of the top couple teams. But I don't know. I just don't get a sense yet that these are teams that are just going to all of a sudden fall flat on their face and become the 10th or 11th best team in the SEC. I don't know that happens with a South Carolina and Ole Miss this season.
You mentioned Ole Miss, Blake. Let's move into them because, again, the only undefeated team left in the SEC, sitting at 11-0. Chris Beard, year one. This was another team that, the expectations weren't sky high. Again, year one of a new head coach, but you knew with Chris Beard, despite some of his checkered past and off the court things, that the thing that he does better than anybody nearly in college basketball is win, and win at a high clip. A lot of close victories here, Blake. Again, I'm just looking at their schedule. A 2-point win at UCF, 3-point win over Memphis. But, I mean, you beat NC State by 20. You beat Cal. That's a quality win. You beat Temple by 1. But, I mean, the fact of the matter is this. You're 11-0, and nobody saw that coming in Oxford.
Yeah, it's like that's kind of been my point with Ole Miss. It's like people can pick them apart all they want, but we've seen Kentucky lose to Wilmington. We've seen Missouri lose to Jackson State. We've seen Arkansas lose to, so we've seen SEC teams drop games they shouldn't. I'm not going to penalize Ole Miss for winning every game on their schedule at this point, because they're one of only a couple teams left in the country that have done that. And the Memphis win. I mean, it's like, I think sometimes people are just overlooking this one, where it's like, wait a second, like, this Memphis team is really good based on what we've seen to this point. They just blew out Virginia. They just beat Clemson. That's Clemson's only loss on the season. They won at A&M. And Ole Miss beat that team. And so I think, yeah, like, just the Chris Beard effect, like, it is real. And they have come in, and I think this was a team that people kind of rolled their eyes at us in the summer because we did kind of our preseason look ahead rankings, and we're like, all right, it's summer, it's June, let's look at everybody's roster. If everyone has everybody, which Ole Miss hasn't had everybody until the past game when they got Brandon Murray back, because of the two-time transfer thing and everything. But um, I said, hey, I could see Ole Miss finishing as a top 5 team in the SEC. And there was one, I think, video we did in the summer. We had them like at 3, and people were like, "What are you guys talking about?" And I'm like, the thing is, if you just look at the roster, it's really good, and it's kind of loaded with players that, if again the chemistry came together, there's so much talent on the roster. Now they're still going to have their issues, I think, scoring at times. They're not going to be a Chris Beard defense just yet. I think it'll take him a little bit longer to get there. But like you said, Chris, they've beaten everybody on their schedule, and no other SEC team has done that. So until I start to see a reason to kind of knock them and say, well, that fall off's coming, I can't predict that right now because they've done all the work to this point to be 11-0. So
Blake, I saw you guys talking about this on your show, so I'll ask. Alabama's a team. You look at the record, 6-5 overall, and I know they lost a lot, obviously from last year. A couple lottery pick guys, excuse me, but I mean, looking at that overall record is somewhat surprising. Do you see Nate Oates' team getting it in gear, or is this setting up to be a disappointing year for the Crimson Tide?
yeah, I mean, I completely understand why there's a lot of Alabama fans that are disappointed right now.
Mhm.
Because like you mentioned, I mean, 6-5, you just look at the record and you're like, oh man, that's not an ideal place to be in. Now, the thing they have going for them, there's a couple things. Fact is, they played one of the toughest schedules in the country at this point. On the flip side, the problem is they didn't get any of those wins. Kind of go 0-5 in the 5 biggest games they played. Now, most of those games were close. There's nobody in the country that's played a last 3 game set the way they played against Purdue, Creighton, and Arizona, all away from home. Um, and they had their chances to win 2 of those 3 games. Even the Arizona game, they were doing okay for a while there. But I think with Alabama, and I've kind of used them as a Missouri from last year, although I don't think it's a
Mhm.
fair comparison necessarily. But, if you remember back to last year, Missouri was the team that just came out of nowhere for a lot of people because of why. It was because of how good they were offensively. Like, they were never going to beat teams with their defense. They could turn some people over and all that, but it was all going to be about how well they shoot it, and their scoring was so good at times. They were able to make up for the defensive deficiencies. Boy, does Alabama have some defensive deficiencies. They can't guard without fouling. They don't really have any rim protection, all that stuff. But my goodness, if you watch them play, you understand that Alabama is going to score 80 points against pretty much every team that they play at this point. It feels like they scored 74 against Arizona and went 8 of 40 from 3. They still put up 74 points, and it's one of those things where I think they're going to wind up beating teams in the SEC. A lot of teams, maybe they get to 12 wins or something like that. Maybe that's what it takes to get to the NCAA tournament for them because they don't have a signature win elsewhere to this point. I just think their scoring is going to put them in a position to beat anybody on their schedule the rest of the way. But their defense is going to put them in a position to where they could lose to maybe anybody in on their schedule the rest of the way. And so Alabama is probably one of the more unpredictable teams from here on out. But I still think they have as much upside, maybe as anyone not named Tennessee or Kentucky in the league, just because of how good they are on offense. So.
You mentioned Kentucky, Blake. Let's talk about the Wildcats. Got a big win last night over Louisville. Granted, not a great Louisville team, but still big rivalry game on the road. Beat North Carolina last weekend, 87-83. Many are touting the Cats as the best team, arguably, in the SEC. And certainly, I think we all know what the goals and expectations are there. They want to get back to a Final Four. They want to win a national championship. Do you think they have the team, Blake, to do it this year?
I think this is the best team he's had in quite a while. Yeah, and it all runs together. I feel like over the past several years because those have been teams that just have not reached the success they wanted NCAA tournament wise. But if you think back to like those teams, I don't even remember 17, 18, 19, somewhere in there. I think it's the best team he's had since then. And I think it's just I kind of talked about South Carolina in the realm of like it just feels like that those big 4 guys and of course a couple guys off the bench too. Um, they just feel like guys who just sort of rise to the occasion and like they meet kind of the demand of what's expected from them. And you said it, like Kentucky's expectations. Anytime you go to Kentucky, you know what the expectations are, and you know the pressure that comes along with it. This is kind of somewhat vintage Cal team, right? Where it's like, hey, we're going back to the freshmen and we're going to see if they can get us, to where we need to go. And yes, they've got some of the older guys like Antonio Reeves and Trey Mitchell that are really helping, but elsewhere, they are leaning in on the freshmen, and all the freshmen so far have delivered and maybe even exceeded expectations in many spots. And remember, that's a class that we were hyping up as just this unbelievable class. I still think most of the guys have maybe even exceeded what we thought they would do right off the bat. And so I think this Kentucky team right now is one that is built to win a national championship. We know how hard it is to do that in this era, and we know, how the transfer portal has changed everything. But I just look at the way these guys play, and there is a chemistry there. There is a just fearlessness with the young guys that you don't always see with freshmen. And it seems like every single one of these guys that are playing, which, if you're talking about the bulk of the minutes, we're talking about five, yeah, five guys. Um, I mean, these guys just go out and and they play, and the chemistry's there, and they built everything in with the shooting. Like they're one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the country. When's the last time we said that about Kentucky? That's a dangerous thing. Is they're so good shooting wise. They've got the size that you expect Kentucky to have, and I just think they've got those intangibles that some of these recent teams have not had. So I would be surprised if Kentucky is not one of the one or two best teams in the SEC at the end of the season.
And Blake, you mentioned the Tennessee Volunteers, the team that almost certainly will challenge for that top spot in the SEC. You look at the record, you see 3 losses. You're like, oh, 3 non-conference losses. But then you look, Purdue, Kansas, and North Carolina. That's who those 3 losses are to, and they have crushed everybody else, Blake. What have you seen from the Volunteers at this point? And again, I would imagine they're going to give Kentucky a run for their money and anybody else at the top of the SEC as well.
Yeah, I think it's take your pick on which of these two teams you think are the best team right now, and maybe wind up being the best team in the SEC. If it's not an Alabama and Auburn and A&M, one of those kind of teams. But yeah, I mean Tennessee, it's the added scoring punch of a Dalton Connect, who I know has been kind of battling injury a little bit recently. But I mean, we always say, Chris, like when guys transfer up, you just don't you sometimes but you don't always. It's very unpredictable, right? If guys can just transfer from a northern Colorado like Dalton connected and be able to come into Tennessee and just be kind of a scoring juggernaut like he was for a good portion of the start of the season. Like I said, I think there's a little injury aspect to the last several games, hasn't scored as much, but the good news is he hasn't had to score that much because Tennessee has so many guys, as we know, the returning guys who have played for what seems like 40 years together with that trio of Ziegler and Vescovy and James. And so having that experience, I think, is again something that a lot of other SEC teams don't have. And what I'm going to say next. It's Tennessee. They're going to be one of the best defensive teams in the country. It's going to be hard to play against them. We know people get frustrated by that at times. I think Tennessee, oh, they foul too much and they don't get called for it. They're too physical, and that's just the way Tennessee plays. Like that's their style. And I think the difference with this team is that they have way more of kind of an offensive punch. And like you said, the only issues on the resume so far losses at Purdue, Kansas, and North Carolina all the way from home. You're okay with that because they've beaten Illinois. That Wisconsin win looks great now on the road. And so, yeah, I think the Vols and the Cats, I feel like we said that for years, with an Alabama popping up here and Auburn popping up there. But it just seems like Tennessee and Kentucky are kind of the top dogs again this year, just in terms of the way their rosters are built.
Now, Blake, we started off the show talking about a pair of teams in South Carolina and Ole Miss that were by most picked near the bottom of the league. Let's talk some middle of the pack teams. I look at schools like a Florida, like a, dare I say, Auburn, although I think you could argue they're one of the better teams in the league. Mississippi State, Missouri, Texas A&M, and Buzz Williams is 7-4. Which of those middle of the pack teams do you feel the best about moving forward in SEC play? A team that you expect from that middle of the pack to separate themselves into the top tier, if you will.
Yeah, I think A&M's going to get there, because we saw what they did last year. I don't know that they're going to have a repeat, from last year where they go 15-3 in the conference or something like that. I think it's going to be hard to do this year.
Mm.
Maybe even again for maybe the favorites in Tennessee and Kentucky. But I think the thing you look at with A&M is they've lost 4 games. They've lost them to Houston, Memphis, Florida Atlantic, all those games by 7 points or less. Like they were all close games where they had a chance. They lost the one at Virginia by 12. But I think what we have to remember with A&M, and maybe I shouldn't be as confident in this as I should, because Tyrese Radford's situation He's kind of been in and out a little bit, and Buzz Williams kind of said it's an issue they're trying to, take care of and see exactly when he's going to be able to play maybe more consistently. I mean, he's their second best player. So if for some reason Tyrese Radford were to continue to miss a lot of action, like he's only played in one of the last 5 games, played 24 minutes against Memphis. If that continues, then yeah, I think you knock A&M a little bit, but they still have what's probably the best player in the SEC in Wade Taylor. We've saw we've seen what he can do. Like he can just carry you like he did against Houston, where he just went off and scored 34 points or whatever. But they need Radford to help them get back to being like a top 3 SEC team to where they can challenge for an SEC title. So I'm just gonna, maybe assume that happens, and if it does, I think they're going to be just fine. The other team I will quickly point out in there, I think Mississippi State. Let's remember they're 9-2 right now. I know they had a couple losses where it's like Georgia Tech and Southern, like not good losses, but they're doing all this without Tolu Smith, who is a top 3 SEC player probably. When you're talking about a guy just fully healthy on the floor, the way he impacts the game on both sides. Again, a team like Tennessee, you don't want to play them because of how they're going to play defense. They're going to be physical. They're going to be hard to score against. But once they get him back, that opens up another dimension with their offense. And they've had a guy like Josh Hubbard just come in from out of nowhere as a freshman and just kind of take over games. So I think A&M Mississippi State, because of the way they play, they're going to be ones that I think, have a great chance to challenge at the top of the SEC. But like we mentioned, it's kind of going to be a couple intangibles here and there, whether it's player availability or just seeing how Mississippi State performs once they get their best player back on the floor. So.
Now, Blake, I'm going to put you on the spot here with this next one because I think we have a tendency as SEC fans we let our egos run wild and maybe have a little bit of an inflated sense of what our team is because they're beating up on these non-conference teams. That applies to all sports, right? So I'm going to put you on the spot, Blake. Is there a team out there in the SEC that you look at that maybe their fan base is feeling high and mighty, the record is shiny, but you think there's a chance they may get humbled once conference play begins?
I mean, look, the easy answer would probably be an Ole Miss or South Carolina, just because like you said earlier, it's fans are trying to keep their emotions in check. It's almost like it's just too good to be true to start things off because we could have had this conversation 100 times in the summer, and we probably could not have got to a point where we said, "Oh yeah, Ole Miss and South Carolina are going to be 21-1 combined when we get to Christmas." Um, so I think that's what I would go with, just because by the nature of what our projections were for those teams coming into the season, and like you said too, I think it's fair to also point out that they've won some close games, and when you win close games, sometimes you need the ball to bounce your way, and you may get into games against better teams, and it doesn't bounce your way, and you lose some of those games. So it's certainly possible. Outside of those two, I mean, I'll go back to Arkansas. Like their fans are probably not as thrilled right now with where they are, but I tell you, there were also some people where we had them 10th in our power rankings this week, and there were some Arkansas fans who were just like, "How on earth could you have them at 10?" And we're like, because, like, they've got to win against Duke. What else do they have? Even in some of the games they've won, like I said earlier, they've not looked that good. And so I say Arkansas not because I think their fan base is as high as could be right now with the way they're playing, but I think there is truly a scenario where what happens if they don't figure this out? Then I think you are legitimately looking at the potential for this Arkansas team. And remember, they finished 10th last year in the SEC, I think. I mean, you're looking at that same potential, and I think that would be a huge disappointment based on how this team was built and how last year's team was built, because I thought they added so much more shooting with this team. They added a lot more kind of offensive dynamics, but yet it's not really paid off outside of just those spurts where a Khalif Battle goes off, Tremont Mark goes off. So I mean, I feel like we could answer Arkansas to like any question because they are just the most confusing team out there. And I would have to say, for all the Arkansas fans that are just completely bought in on the fact that they're going to turn this thing around, I've always said give Eric Musselman the benefit of the doubt because he does it every year in terms of them finding the right answers once you get to March. I don't know with this team just yet because I just haven't seen it enough consistently through 12 games to maybe think that's actually going to happen. So.
Blake, hypothetically, you're talking to someone that, again, doesn't watch a ton of SEC basketball. Who's the most exciting player in the league that you would point someone to say, hey, you got to go watch this guy play?
Yeah, I mean, I think Wade Taylor is still the best player in the league. I ultimately picked Janai Broom as my SEC Player of the Year going into the season, but I mean, it's kind of 1A, 1B with Wade Taylor, I thought. But I'll give you the other answer that's probably, emerged and everyone's been talking about him. I mean, Reed Shepherd at Kentucky. Like, this is a guy, obviously, he was a highly heralded recruit and all this, but I think just watching Reed, if you are just a basketball person, like if you like the mix of old school basketball play and like new school basketball play, he is like the prototype where he will do all those things. He'll make all the winning plays, right? Like that's the coach speak. He'll be the guy that gets the loose ball. He'll go play defense and block a shot, um, and all these things. But remember, we're talking about a 6'3" freshman who comes in a group that is just loaded in terms of like and maybe an all-time freshman type class, and we're all talking about Justin Edwards being maybe the number one pick in the 2024 draft. We're talking about DJ Wagner, what he can do at the guard position. Dillingham has been fantastic. You could realistically pick any of these freshmen for Kentucky and probably be fine with it. But I'm going to give Reed Shepherd his due because there have been so many games this year where if he's not on the floor, I don't know. He feels like the one that holds everything together. And again, if you just like watching a great, fundamentally sound basketball player that can kind of do it all, um, he would get my vote because he has just been fantastic at times. So
Now, Blake, I know you're an SEC guy, but from the national perspective, has there been anything that surprised you, jumped out at you? Again, it's non-conference play, and so I think we try to not draw too many conclusions too early, but has there been anything from the national perspective that's jumped out to you to this point?
I would say if there's a team, I mean, I think Duke has struggled a little more than I thought they would to this point. Now they're 8-3, just got a good win against Baylor. But I mean, I said going to the season, said if you give me one team to win the national championship this year, I may go with Duke because I just like the way the roster was built. So, but I think that's something that's interesting. And the question is like, we got to a point where we were so used to judging a team solely based on the teams that used to be ranked in the top 10 or top 15, right? It was okay, well, they may have one loss going into conference play. But it's like, look at how many teams out there now that are probably top 10 type teams that have multiple losses, three losses maybe, or maybe even more in some cases, where you look at some of these teams and you're like, it's just the nature of the teams they're playing, it's the nature of the transfer portal, all those things. And it's just taken a while to come together. So I think a team like Duke maybe it's been a little surprising that maybe just looking at the record, like 8-3, maybe they should have won a couple more games in there. Obviously, the Georgia Tech loss stood out. Um, but I mean, elsewhere, I think Chris, the biggest thing I would say, and maybe it kind of ties in the transfer portal situation. You're seeing how good teams can be at the mid-major level because of their ability to go out and get players that just will go there and stay there. And we know NIL plays a part in this.
Mhm.
But it's like Florida Atlantic, right? They were the team everybody was talking about last season to finish the year. And wow, what a run all the way to the national championship, right? But think about how hard it was for a Dusty May to like, okay, I've got to find a way to keep these players. And yet he still finds a way to do it. And we look at like we see the rewards for that. He's keeping these players. They're still a fantastic team. They're 9-2 this season. They got a game against Arizona on Saturday, which should be really good. Um, and so I think it's just continuing to see that gap close between the mid-major type teams and these traditional power conference teams that we just for the longest time felt like they were always going to have the edge, whether it's talent-wise, coach-wise, whatever. That is no longer the case in college basketball anymore. And I think it's never been more evident than right now as we're seeing some of these mid-major teams again, whether it's a Florida Atlantic. Look what BYU's done this season. I know they're in the Big 12 now, but if we're just looking at it from that's a team that just came from the Mountain West. Look at the way they've kind of built their program now and see where they're at this point. So I think that's just always kind of fascinating to me is just to see how many of these teams continue to take that step forward. And yeah, like it just to me makes for a much more interesting product in college basketball because you've got a lot more possibilities and just a lot more, I think, excitement for a lot of different teams out there that aren't just your traditional powers the way it used to be. So.
Blake, in the Big 12, that makes me think Texas and Oklahoma are all excited what that means on the gridiron, right? That's the most obvious. But how excited are you about what Texas and OU bring on the hardwood when it comes to the depth and the overall competitive edge that the SEC is going to have on the basketball floor?
Yeah, those are two programs that are in very interesting spots as they're going to head into the SEC next year because You think about Texas last year, Rodney Terry makes this magical run after everything that happened with Chris Beard. And, off to a good start this year, and they gave him the contract and they rewarded him for his efforts of getting them, to a point where they almost won 30 games. Got to I remember what it was. They lost to Miami in the tournament. I think that was the Elite Eight or whatever it was. But so yeah, I mean, I think seeing that now you kind of like, all right, you feel like your coach is in place. There's a lot of positive momentum there based on what you did last season. And look at Oklahoma. There were so many people last year, myself included, that were like, I don't know if Porter Mosher in Oklahoma is just the right fit. Had all the success at Loyola Chicago. We remember the tournament runs. We remember everything. Sister Gina, we remember all of that. But you look at the way he started, in Oklahoma, and you're like, I just don't know if that's a fit. And me just kind of hearing some stuff, they went 15 and 17 last year, 19 and 16 the year before. It's like, I don't know if this is going to ultimately be a long-term kind of marriage here. But yet here they are. They're 10 and 1. They just lost to North Carolina. They beat Arkansas. They beat USC. They beat Iowa. Beat everybody. Providence, that's a good win now. Look what Providence has done. So, yeah, I think these are two programs with a lot of momentum coming into the SEC. And boy, we talk about the strength of the league, right? And what you start projecting in terms of NCAA tournament teams. I mean, this is going to be the college football playoff where all of a sudden we're going to go out and double the number of NCAA tournament teams next year. But you're going to add two SEC teams to the mix that are going to have a great chance to make the NCAA tournament. So it's like, how many teams in the SEC start to make the tournament regularly and its current, iteration? Like, how does that start to look? Because they are two that are going to really battle, I think, every year for a chance to be near the top of the SEC. And so it's only going to make it stronger.
Blake Lovell, Southeastern 14, does a fantastic job talking all things SEC hoops. Blake, one last thing, and I'll get you out of here. Just looking way too far ahead, a couple weeks down the road. Saturday, January the 6th, SEC play will officially begin. You've got South Carolina, Mississippi State, Florida, Kentucky, Mizzou, Georgia, Arkansas, Auburn, Vandy, Bama, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, and LSU. How excited are you for the slate for SEC play to get going, and specifically that day of games?
Yeah, it's a great start for a lot of teams because, like you said, this is a chance for South Carolina to sort of flex what it's done to this point against a Mississippi State team, which may have Tolu Smith back by then. I would probably say he'll be back by that point. We'll find out. But great opportunity for South Carolina right off the bat. And then you think about Florida. Florida's been an up and down team. Great opportunity at home against Kentucky to kind of right some of the wrongs there. Same with Arkansas. Arkansas's got a great opportunity home against Auburn, who I think is the third best team in the SEC right now. And then you look at that Tennessee Ole Miss game. That's the one that everybody's going to kind of circle if Ole Miss can keep this thing going until then, which I would expect them to, because this is one where it's kind of that prove it game. And we talked about it's kind of fitting, I guess. Tennessee and Mississippi State are two teams you just don't want to play against, and they're not easy to prepare for in terms of the style that they play. Well, that's what South Carolina and Ole Miss are going to get on day one, in SEC play. And so I think that makes it very intriguing just to see how we start to see some of these teams adapt to what we know is a grind week in and week out of playing this SEC schedule. And a lot of big opportunities because, like we mentioned, even for teams, Alabama's not going to get anything from beating Vanderbilt. But this is where you start to, okay, you got to start finding all those wins that you need to build those NCAA tournament resumes. I think that's where things start to get really significant for an Ole Miss, for South Carolina teams like that.
Blake, always a pleasure, my friend. Sincerely, we appreciate it. Merry Christmas to you and yours. Happy New Year, my man, and we'll talk more in 2024.
Yep, same to you, Chris. Thanks as always.
Appreciate you, man. Great stuff, guys. Blake Lovell, Southeastern 14. Again, a wealth of knowledge when it comes to SEC basketball. He does a fantastic job. Be sure to go check those guys out. Blake Lovell over at Southeastern 14. And cannot wait for SEC play to begin on the hardwood. Guys, that being said, we're going to jump into a quick break. The college football playoff is officially around the corner as Alabama will take on the Michigan Wolverines in the Rose Bowl. I'll break down that game, and guys, I'll give my prediction for it as well. All that and more here on this Friday. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow.
Muscle Dougie, ho. Muscle Dougie, ho.
Ladies and gents, boys and girls, we are back here on this Friday, December the 22nd, 2023. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. I want to say thank you yet again to Blake Lovell. That was a fantastic conversation. Really good stuff. And I think for a lot of us who have kept one eye on basketball, right, while paying attention to the football stuff and kind of being ingrained in what's going on with football, whether it be on the field or transfer portal or NIL or just the storylines that come out on seemingly a daily basis. I thought that was a great job by Blake, breaking everything down, all of these teams. Again, guys, non-conference play will be concluding over the next couple weeks. And Saturday, January the 6th, will officially begin SEC play on the hardwood. Really excited for that as we continue to learn about these teams in the SEC. So again, appreciate Blake taking the time. We will definitely have Blake back on the airwaves here again soon. I see you all guys in the chat. Be sure to continue to leave us your questions, your comments, your voicemails, and more here on this Friday. We will get into all of those in our daily mailbag segment. I certainly want to hear from you. In the meantime, guys, we're talking college football playoff, the Rose Bowl, between the Alabama Crimson Tide and the Michigan Wolverines on New Year's Day, January the 1st, a 5 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff on ESPN. This game, of course, being played at the Rose Bowl in beautiful Pasadena, California. You look at the Vegas spread in this one, guys. Michigan currently sits as a 1.5-point favorite in this game. The over-under sitting at 44.5. And as you look at this ball game, guys, we move into our top storylines. I mentioned this a few weeks back, and this has nothing necessarily to do with the game, but what I think is a really fun storyline is it feels like, for different reasons, right, a pair of evil empires facing off, right? For the college football fan that's not a fan of either Alabama or Michigan, you really have to make the decision of, okay, who do I hate less? Who do I hate less? Because on one hand, you have Alabama and Nick Saban. And is it fair that people hate Alabama? Maybe, maybe not. That's up for you to decide. But some people just hate Bama because it's like hating the New York Yankees, right? They win all the time. They're so good. And that makes you hate them. It's like hating the New England Patriots when Tom Brady was the quarterback. A lot of people just have Alabama and Nick Saban fatigue, and I totally get that. So on one hand, you got this evil empire led by Lord Nick Saban that is the Alabama Crimson Tide. On the other side, though, you've got this whole Connor Stallions thing and the cheating scandal and Jim Harbaugh suspended for half of the season. And, many people thought that maybe Michigan shouldn't be in the college football playoff because of, some moral code or some ethics code or whatever it might be. Like it should have been questioned. Should Michigan have actually gotten in? So it's like, you got to pick a side in this one because they can't both lose, right? So I think that's really fascinating. I think that's interesting. I think this is a pair of teams who are disliked for their own reasons. And I think it's kind of funny that the casual watcher, a lot of folks have to decide on game day, okay, which of these two teams do I dislike less? All right, that's who I'm going to pull for. So it's really interesting for both these programs. Of course, guys, you get two historical programs like this. Like, this is a helmet game, right? When you cut that TV on New Year's Day and you see that Alabama helmet, and you see that Michigan helmet, and you see the backdrop of the Rose Bowl. I mean, guys, it's I'm getting chills just thinking about it. Like, it's going to be one of the most magical settings. Like, when you think of college football, the words college football, and you look that up in the dictionary, I think you see a game like this. Like this is what you envision. And again, so many great storylines in this one. On the field we go, though, guys. I think the big question for me is which version of Alabama shows up, right? The one thing that Bama was not this season was consistent. At their best, Alabama's good enough to beat anybody, as we saw in that game against Georgia. But at their worst, or nearly their worst, they're bad enough to almost lose to an Auburn team that got blasted by New Mexico State. And I know the transitive property does not work in college football, but still, you can't look at that and not just wonder, okay, we know what this Alabama team is capable of, but which version of Alabama is going to show up in this football game? Because obviously, guys, taking on the Michigan Wolverines, I know their schedule's been soft, but they did beat Ohio State, who was actually my pick to win the national championship over the summer. So, Michigan, one of the elites of the sport. Alabama's going to have to put their best foot forward, play their best football, and that best version of Alabama will have to show up in order to win this football game. So, again, Alabama, extra time to get ready. Does that help in the efforts? But which version do we get of the Alabama Crimson Tide? Even like with the offensive line, right down the stretch, the offensive line was much better. Early in the season, it was atrocious. Do we see those trends continue? Sometimes time off can help. Sometimes, though, guys, it can hurt, and you can revert back to old trends and old ways of doing things. We've seen that time and time again. Will be really interesting to see for Alabama which version of them we get. Guys, I just mentioned it, too, the extra time. That's certainly something in these games when you have, you go from playing every single week practically for 13 weeks or 14 weeks if you got a title game. Then you get a month off. That can help some teams. That can throw some teams out of a groove or out of a rhythm. Does the extra time to prepare help Nick Saban and the Alabama Crimson Tide? Because certainly we've seen it before, guys. Nick Saban with extra time to get ready, bet against him and bet against Alabama at your own risk. And like I mentioned, I think there are some issues. I think there are some concerns that happened during the regular season that both Alabama and Michigan can shore some things up. And, they're going to have extra time to watch film, prepare, rest their guys, by the way, which is huge. I know Alabama, near the end of the season, they were banged up, dealing with injuries, dealing with different issues. So having that extra time certainly is going to help them tremendously to get their best 22 on the field. And then same thing for Michigan as well, guys. I mean, plenty of guys, you may not be injured, but a lot of guys play hurt. So having time to rest up, to lick your wounds, what have you, it is of great value. But we've seen Nick Saban and Bama in this spot before, guys. And, even if you don't think Alabama's the better team than Michigan on paper, Alabama under Nick Saban with extra time to get ready. Again, bet against them at your own peril. Guys, can Alabama protect Jalen Milroe? That's a big question for me. The offensive line was hit or miss this season, and it was miss a lot. I think Jalen Milroe, his running ability, them allowing him to scramble more and use his legs and catering the offense to his ability, I think that certainly helped them down the stretch. I thought Alabama's offensive line was really, really good in that game against Georgia, who's obviously one of the best defensive fronts in all of college football. But Michigan's got their own front seven that's one of the best in the sport as well. And it's going to be a challenge, no doubt. I mean, again, Jalen Milroe, I think, is going to have to be crafty in the pocket. Alabama's going to have one of their best games up front that they've had all season. But certainly, as you look at the numbers, they're not favorable. But again, you have to factor in how much better Bama's offensive front was, how much better they were in the trenches over the last month or so of the season. But again, they'll need to be good yet again, giving Jalen Milroe time to operate in the pocket, to make plays. And, of course, Jalen Milroe, guys, has to be able to do what he did against Georgia, getting outside of the pocket, making plays with his legs, extending plays. The beautiful thing for Alabama about Jalen Milroe in number 4 is this. The moment he steps on the field, he's the best athlete on the field. So we'll see if Michigan has anyone that can keep up with him. Do they put a spy on him? We've seen that work against Alabama. We shall see. But again, Bama's got to be able to protect their quarterback, give him time to operate, to get that offense going in this game against an elite Michigan defense. Now, switching sides of the football, switching teams, if you will. When you look at Michigan offensively, guys, it all starts with their fantastic running back in Blake Corum. He's a physical specimen. He runs with a bad attitude, which is one of the best compliments you can give a running back, by the way. But Blake Corum is really what opens things up for this offense. And again, Michigan's been elite defensively. But if they're going to beat Alabama, they've got to take it to another level, I think, offensively. They got to do a little bit more than what they've done. And a lot of that's going to fall on J.J. McCarthy, which is my next point here in my notes. This is J.J. McCarthy's opportunity to prove that he's a dude, that he is going to flourish in a game like this, a moment like this. Because, again, guys, you look at that game even against Ohio State, like, he was good. He was solid. But as he had that moment where it's like, man, J.J. McCarthy took over that football game. He made the big throw when he had to. You got to get the running game going with Blake Corum. That's how Michigan operates. That's what they want to lean on. That's what they want to establish. But, guys, Michigan ain't going to win this football game if J.J. McCarthy doesn't make some throws. Bottom line, that's it. They're not going to win this football game if J.J. McCarthy and this Michigan offense is conservative and they're dinking and dunking and they're just trying to lean on run game. You're going to have to take some shots in this football game because I just don't think Michigan is going to line up and bully Alabama for 60 minutes, right? That's just not going to happen. That's what they've done a lot this season. I think you're going to have to take more risks. You're going to have to do things on offense maybe you have not done to this point because I think Alabama is going to score, right? We know how good Jalen Milroe is with the deep passing attack, the deep ball. That's his best ball, you could argue. I think there's going to be explosive plays in this football game. Can J.J. McCarthy lead this Michigan offense and go toe-to-toe and go blow for blow with what Alabama will do on the offensive side? Guys, my final storyline in this game, something I found interesting in my research, it ain't over till it's over. And speaking specifically on Alabama, get this, guys. Bama has trailed 5 times. They trailed 5 times this season in the second half of SEC games, and they rallied to win all 5 of them. So even if Michigan's ahead by a touchdown or so, we're going to the fourth quarter, like, the game is far from over. It's far from over. That's honestly, I think, the position that Bama, I don't think they prefer to be in, but they're going to be comfortable in that position. They're not going to care because they've done it all year. They've come back all year. Granted, against better competition like a Michigan, and as the games, the situations, they become more pivotal. They're more pressure-packed. You don't want to put yourself in those type of scenarios. But all I'm saying is this, that even if Michigan jumps out to a lead or Alabama kind of stumbles out the gate, whatever it is, stick around because Alabama has played from behind all year. They found ways to win. So it'll be interesting to see. It's going to be like a pair of heavyweight fighters going at it in this one, guys. Who can deliver that knockout blow late in this game? Going to be a lot of fun to watch, which again leads me to my prediction, guys. Michigan, the 1.5-point favorite. As I mentioned, Vegas expecting a little bit of a lower scoring game, but I think you look at the defenses and you look at the moment, you look at a game like this. I think Texas, Washington, not looking too far to head to our prediction next week or projections for that game next week. I think that one of the 2 college football playoff games could be a higher scoring game. I think this one, you look at it, most folks think that defense is going to rule the day. I will say this. While a lot of people were upset, rightfully so, about the Florida State thing, this is as competitive a college football playoff field as we have ever had. Like, there's no result that would surprise me. Any of the 4 teams in it could win the national title, including these 2 who will play at the Rose Bowl. Michigan, guys, I think, listen, despite all the off-field stuff, despite the Connor Stallion stuff, and it's really, really easy to poke and prod and make fun, and whether you think they should be there or not, or whether you think the NCAA should have taken more strenuous action, hey, that's your opinion, and I totally understand where you're coming from. That being said, Michigan's a damn good football team. Like, let's not kid ourselves. It ain't because Connor Stallions. It ain't because they're cheating. It ain't because of this or that. Michigan's a damn good football team across the board. They're legitimate in the trenches. Blake Corum is one of the best, if not the best running back in college football. J.J. McCarthy is great in that offense and makes plays when they need him to. That defense is relentless, and they will get after Alabama. So make no mistake, Michigan deserves to be in this football game, and they're going to give Alabama all they want and more. On the Alabama side, again, guys, for me, it's just about which version of Bama do we get? Do we get the best possible version? Because we saw Alabama against Auburn in the regular season finale, and I know that's the Iron Bowl. I get it. Weird things happen. But we saw them in the Iron Bowl, and then we saw them against Georgia. Granted, let's call it for what it is now. Let's be fair. A Georgia team that had a banged-up Lad McConkey and a banged-up Brock Bowers, right? Let's be real about that. Still found a way to get the win. Guys, I have doubted Alabama and Nick Saban at every turn this season. Starting in the summer, picked them to go 9-3. I picked the loss against Texas. Granted, I nailed that one. But I picked them to lose to Texas A&M. I picked them to lose to LSU. And I picked them to lose to Georgia in the SEC championship game. So I've doubted Alabama at every single turn. I think Michigan, guys, is good enough to beat Alabama. I think they've got the team. It will not surprise me at all if Michigan beats the Crimson Tide. But you're giving Alabama a month to get ready. You are giving Nick Saban a month to prepare. And Alabama, guys, as crazy as it sounds, because they're Alabama, the expectations every year are to win a national championship. Doesn't it feel like Bama is playing with nothing to lose? Doesn't it feel like Bama's playing with house money in this one? Like, nobody expecting them to be in this situation anyways right after that Texas loss. Nobody expected Bama to be in a game like this or have an opportunity to go to the national title. So if they lose, I mean, certainly it's going to be disappointing. I'm not saying it's not, but it feels like Alabama, as an underdog, literally as the underdog in this football game, is playing with house money as much as they ever have before. That being said, guys, like I mentioned, starting in the summer, I doubted this 2023 Alabama football team and Nick Saban at every single turn, and I gotten burned on multiple occasions. I'm not doing that again. I think with extra time to get ready, I think with time to heal up, right? They're resting some guys that were banged up or limited. They're going to have them healthy, ready to go. I think this is a great back-and-forth football game, guys. I think this game lives up to the hype. I think it lives up to the billing. Like I said earlier, guys, this is a game that gives you goosebumps. It's a helmet game. It's two traditional programs in Alabama, Michigan, at the Rose Bowl. No better setting in college football. Like, this is what we all wanted, right? This is the game that when you look up college football in the dictionary, you see a game like this. That being said, I think it is Alabama that comes out on top. I've gone against the Crimson Tide way too many times this season and gotten burned each and every single time. I will not do that again. I will not doubt Nick Saban with extra time to prepare. I think you will see the best version of Jalen Milroe. I think you'll see the best version of this Alabama football team, and I think that will be good enough to take down the Michigan Wolverines. And guys, dare I say, karma's a real thing. You can only escape the football gods and escape karma for so long. I think Michigan's going to feel some karma because, hey, let's face it, they cheated. They did. They cheated, and they got caught. So I think Alabama is the team to make Michigan pay for their wrongdoing. Nick Saban, Alabama, extra time to prepare. They get the win. Lock me in. Give me Crimson Tide 28, Michigan 24. Guys, that being said, we're going to jump into a quick break. On the other side, a really fun segment. As we go into the Christmas holiday, I give you guys my thoughts, my opinions on what each SEC fan base is asking Santa Claus for Christmas this year. All that and more, guys, on the other side of this break. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow.
Muscle Dougie, ho. Muscle Dougie, ho.
Ladies and gents, boys and girls, we are back here on this Friday, December the 22nd, 2023. An early Merry Christmas to each and every single one of you. I hope Santa Claus brings you everything that your heart desires. Guys, continue to leave us your questions, your comments, your voicemails as well. We'll get into all of those in our daily mailbag segment. And guys, do not forget, last 15 minutes or so of the show, got a big announcement for you guys that we'll be sharing that you definitely want to stick around for. Guys, in case you missed it, this just came out, by the way, so if you missed it, it's okay. It just happened. But Xavier McLeod, you guys remember that name? Former Gamecocks defensive lineman. South Carolina defensive lineman Xavier McLeod, or former, if you will, has committed to Georgia. 4 years of eligibility. Xavier McLeod is now a Georgia Bulldog. So as if it feels like Georgia couldn't steal more defensive linemen from South Carolina than they already do in recruiting and what have you. They go and get Xavier McLeod out of the transfer portal. So interesting to say the least. Guys, with that being said, we're going to keep it moving here on this Friday. What each SEC fan base is asking Santa Claus for Christmas. This is always one of my favorite yearly pieces of content. What is the Christmas wish list for each SEC fan base, guys? Without further ado, we're going to go ahead and dive into this. We're going to get into all 16 SEC teams. Yep, that means Texas and Oklahoma are included in this as well. We'll start with Alabama. I think Alabama fans, simply put, are asking for a national title for this Christmas. And it makes sense, right? After all the doubting back over the summer, and, people love to try to get ahead of things, such as the dynasty is dead, or whenever somebody has a take or an opinion or a prediction or whatever it might be. Like, we love to try to get ahead of it, right? And say, like, I called it. I was the first one that called it, remember? Because if Bama would have went 9-3, yours truly, I'd have been like, see how smart I am? After all the doubting and all those types of predictions and all that chatter over the summer, the chatter early on in the season after Bama lost to Texas, then the South Florida game, that Alabama fans would love nothing more than to wake up on Christmas morning and find a national title in their stocking, another one for Nick Saban. Now, would that lead potentially to his retirement? Maybe. Maybe not, though. As we know that Jalen Milroe will be back next year. Either way, though, a national championship. That's what I think Alabama fans right now, being in the playoff, taking on Michigan, I think that's what they want more than anything to wake up to on Christmas morning. For the Arkansas Razorbacks, I think Arkansas fans are asking Santa Claus for blocking. Their offensive line, guys, was one of the worst in the SEC. I know we can blame Dan Enos and what he was at offensive coordinator, and certainly I think Arkansas made the right move by firing him. But the running game never got going. KJ Jefferson was constantly running for his life. And it was odd to watch Arkansas under Sam Pittman, a guy that, is the big hog himself. Like, we know Sam Pittman for having big physical offensive lines, and he's an offensive line coach at heart. And it never was there for whatever reason for the Hogs. So I think Arkansas fans, they're asking Santa, please bring us blocking. Just bring us blocking. I want to shout out my guy John Neighbors over at Locked On Razorbacks. I asked him, hey, what do you think Arkansas fans would ask Santa Claus for Christmas? He said hope, which I feel like hope and blocking, they're kind of the same thing. They're sort of interchangeable because if Arkansas gets blocking, they'll have hope that Bobby Petrino can be that guy and that the offense can get rolling and that Arkansas football can return back to the standard that the folks in Fayetteville hold it to. When it comes to Auburn fans, I know exactly what Auburn fans are asking Santa Claus for. They're asking Santa Claus for a do-over of 4th and 31. Ooh, that stings that I brought that up. They're asking for a do-over of 4th and 31 against Alabama. Guys, all you had to do was get one stop. All you had to do was not rush 2 players. That's it. 4th and 31. Think of the odds on that. Think of how improbable that is. I don't think there's anything Auburn fans want more than a do-over on that 4th and 31. Because you know what? Just like the kick six, right? Just like the kick six, it's still one of the greatest moments in college football, certainly in the Iron Bowl. Auburn fans will now have to live with forever 4th and 31. They'd love nothing more than a do-over. Guys, to Gainesville we go. Florida Gator fans. What are they asking Santa Claus for? I think Gator fans are asking Santa Claus for Christmas, and maybe this is a little premature. I think they're asking for a new head coach. I don't think the approval rating's very high in Gainesville for Billy Napier, guys. And I like Billy. I'm not trying to lead the fire Billy Napier train, but go look at Florida social media. Go look at Florida Gator social media and get back to me. They are not thrilled with the way things are going right now. And I don't think anybody can really blame them. So I think Florida fans, they love to wake up and see an Urban Meyer comeback in their stocking. They love to wake up and see maybe Dan Lanning in their stocking. I don't know. One of these elite coaches out there. I think Florida Gator fans, I think a lot of them are ready for new leadership. Georgia, what are they asking for in Athens? I think Georgia fans are asking Santa Claus for Christmas another shot at Alabama. I think that's what they want. Another shot at that SEC championship. A game in which Georgia, I'm sure, leaves that one still feeling like they were the better team. It was self-inflicted wounds and self-inflicted errors, right? I mean, the one that stands out most to me, guys, the fumble on the pitch, the reverse thing that was botched, gave Alabama the football inside of Georgia's 20. That was basically a kick-in touchdown for the Crimson Tide. I think if Georgia fans, if they're honest with you, if they could get one thing, just another shot at Nick Saban, man. The opportunity to take down Bama in the SEC title and get back to the college football playoff and have a chance at a 3rd straight national championship. A do-over the SEC title and another shot at Lord Nick Saban. I think that's what Georgia wants more than anything. The Kentucky Wildcats, folks in Lexington. I think what Kentucky fans are asking Santa Claus for more than anything has nothing to do with football. I think they're asking Santa Claus for a Final Four appearance, right? It's basketball season in Lexington, guys. Let's face it, right? And I'm not even saying that as a shot. It is. Kentucky's a really good basketball team. We know that the Cats love their basketball. But it's been a long time since John Calipari and the Wildcats have been to the Final Four, and that's kind of crazy to think about. As good as their program is, it's been quite some time. So I think Kentucky fans got a big win over Louisville last night. They've been impressive early on. I think a lot of folks are touting Kentucky as maybe the best team in the SEC on the hardwood. A Final Four appearance. There's a lot of pressure on John Calipari. Cats fans would love nothing more than to wake up and see under that tree a Final Four appearance in 2024 for John Calipari and Kentucky. Down on the Bayou Bengals of LSU, their fan base, it's funny because I put here that LSU fans are waking up on Christmas morning asking Santa, please bring us a competent and new but competent defensive coordinator. But LSU just this morning just lost their offensive coordinator to Notre Dame. So, heck, they need both, or they want both, I would say. So, I think defensive coordinator, getting rid of the DC that led to the historically bad defense, if you will, getting rid of him. But also, they got a vacancy at offensive coordinator as well. So, I think LSU fans want a pair of new coordinators to go with Brian Kelly going into year 3 of his tenure. In Starkville, guys, Jeff Lebby takes over at Mississippi State. I think Mississippi State fans, really tough situation, guys. It was around this time last year that Mike Leach passed away, RIP, the Pirate. I think with Jeff Lebby's hiring, Mississippi State fans just want from Santa Claus, guys. I think they just want the return of good offense. I think they just want the offense to be good again because this past year was brutal to watch. And I think Jeff Lebby can bring that to Starkville. But, I mean, here's the thing, guys. If you're not going to be an upper echelon SEC team, which I don't think anybody is under the impression that Mississippi State is that, right? They're a middle of the pack, middle third to, let's face it, bottom third of the SEC type of team. They're a team that if you're winning 7 to 8 games a year, you're doing well. But if you're going to be that type of team, guys, it's at least got to be fun to watch. It's at least got to be entertaining, right? At least with Mike Leach, no, Mississippi State wasn't winning national titles or SEC championships, but man, they were one of the most fun teams in the country to watch week in and week out. I think State fans want that again. They enjoyed having that unique identity. They enjoyed having that explosive offense. And I think when they wake up on Christmas morning, they'd love nothing more than to see good offense back in Starkville. Tacoma, we go, guys. The Missouri Tigers. This one's easy. And you heard, like, you can hear it every time, right? You talk to a Missouri fan. I hear it every time in the tone when I talk to Colin Anthony in the Mizzodcast. I think what Mizzou fans want more than anything for Christmas is respect from the SEC, the rest of the SEC, if you will. Respect from all of the other schools and fan bases in the SEC. Because, guys, it's crazy. It doesn't matter what MIZ does. Heck, they can put together winning streaks against schools like South Carolina, Arkansas. And how is that rewarded? The fan bases of those two schools, right? Georgia has a winning streak against you. You say, hey, tip your cap. They're a great program. They're one of the elites. They're awesome. Missouri has a winning streak. It's not even, you know what? They've just been a better team and better program than us. The fan bases of South Carolina and Arkansas are still telling you, I don't know how we lose to them every year. They're not as good as us. Every year. Missouri just wants respect, man. I don't think they need it. But if they were honest with you deep down, they want it. I think MIZ would love to have that in their stocking on Christmas morning. Guys, we move to Oklahoma, one of the new members of the SEC. What do they want for Christmas? I think they want an easier 2024 schedule, guys. We talked about yesterday the toughest 2024 slates. Oklahoma's slate is as difficult as any in the conference, and of them in Texas are the new members. I think they got the short and the stick. So I think Oklahoma, I think they just like some relief when it comes to that 24 schedule, if anything. They're not going to get it, but they can wish for it. So if they could get anything on Christmas, I think that would be it. Guys, to Oxford, Mississippi, we go, the Ole Miss Rebels. What does Ole Miss want on Christmas morning? Guys, Ole Miss fans would love nothing more than to wake up on December 25th, come down those stairs, see that Christmas tree, and sitting under the tree is Texas A&M defensive line transfer Walter Nolan. They'd love nothing more. Pete Golding to work more of his magic, tweet another shark emoji, and Walter Nolan be sitting down there. That's the big one, right? They've crushed the transfer portal. They've crushed in recruiting. They've added difference makers from the portal. But Walter Nolan's like that last guy. If they can get him, that would put the finishing touches on one of the best portal classes we've probably ever seen in the SEC. I think they'd all tell you guys, Santa Claus, give us Walter Nolan or give us death on Christmas Day. To South Carolina, to Columbia we go, guys. What are Gamecock fans asking for Christmas? It's interesting sometimes how fan bases embody the personalities or take on the personalities of their head coach. And I think South Carolina does that with Shane Beamer. I think a lot of folks, a lot of the diehards, the fanaticals especially, that you see on social media, they embody Shane Beamer and his personality, and he embodies them. They embody him. It's all one and the same, right? And what does Shane Beamer love to say? Whether it's after a win, it's after a loss, what has been the constant theme since day one? You know where I'm going with this. Gamecock fans are asking Santa Claus to leave in a tiny little box under the tree, unwrap it, open it up, and what is inside? Joy. Finding some joy. That's it. Just joy. Doesn't have to be a certain number of wins. Doesn't have to be a certain commitment. Doesn't have to be a certain signing, certain event. Just joy. Just overall joy. And my wish as well is that I hope Santa Claus brings Gamecock Nation joy. And I hope that many of you find some joy this Christmas season. Guys, to Knoxville we go. The Tennessee Volunteers. What do Tennessee fans want from Santa Claus more than anything? A win in the swamp. A win in the swamp. I don't know if there's demons in the field or what it is, but Tennessee, they go to the swamp, they forget how to play football. That was evident this past season, right? Now, they won't get their shot to cash in on that gift in 2024. But Tennessee, they don't want to win there. They need to win there. It's been forever. 2003, the last time they won at the swamp. I know Tennessee fans, they just want to get that monkey off their back. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. Tennessee fans need a win at the swamp. Now, Texas Longhorn fans, this one's simple. What do they want Santa Claus to bring them for Christmas? Texas fans want Santa Claus to bring them that Texas is really back. To be back. That's it. They want to be, quote unquote, back. Because you guys know as well as I do, if Texas, it doesn't matter if they made the playoff. They don't win the national title. Oh, Texas isn't back. See, they're not back. What is back for Texas? Whatever that is, that's what Texas fans want from the big man. Texas A&M, guys, those folks in College Station, I tell you what they want from Santa. I don't even know if Santa's bag's deep enough for this one. They want a refund for the 2022 recruiting class. $30 million they spent, supposedly, rumored, allegedly, on that class. Every 4-star and 5-star signee, guys, from that class is no longer with the program. How about that? No longer with the program. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? They want a refund. I don't know if Santa's bag is that deep, but they want a refund. And finally, guys, Vanderbilt fans, what do they ask for? What are Commodore fans up there in Nashville? What do they want for Christmas? Guys, they're asking Santa Claus if he could work his magic, his Christmas magic. Vanderbilt fans would love for Santa Claus to make every day be baseball season. Because that's the one time a year that Vanderbilt fans, let's face it, can be happy, right? Football's no good. And I love Clark Lee. Let's be honest about it, right? Football's no good. Jerry Stackhouse and what they're doing on the hardwood doesn't look much better. They have a losing record in non-conference play. The Vandy boys are the last saving grace for Vanderbilt fans. I mean, that's the last saving grace for them. If Santa Claus could just make baseball season year-round, I know that would bring a smile to their faces. So, that is my list, guys. What each SEC fan base is asking Santa Claus for Christmas. What are you hoping that Santa brings your favorite team on December the 25th? Guys, we're going to jump into a quick break. On the other side, we'll dive into our daily mailbag segment, take some of your questions, comments, voicemails, and more here on this Friday. All that and more. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow.
Muscle Dougie Ho. Muscle Dougie, ho.
Ladies and gents, boys and girls, we are back here on this Friday, December the 22nd, 2023. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in, guys. With that being said, we're jumping right into it. Our daily mailbag segment, your questions, your comments, your voicemails. I want to hear from you, whether it be on YouTube, Facebook, or again, you can text us at 843-790-3377. Guys, like I mentioned, big announcement upcoming in the next 20 minutes or so, so just stay tuned to all that. But again, I want to get into your questions. Let's go ahead and start, guys. We actually have a voicemail on the voicemail line. Without further ado, let's go ahead and rock and roll.
With Juice is kind of similar to other questions. So with Juice Wells leaving, and basically, I don't know what the future of our team will be like, but how do you play out? If you could give us your prediction on what our record will be, and then how these new transfers, how the new transfers coming in, well, maybe they'll change something in our team, or maybe not. We'll see. But I just want to get your thoughts on how these new transfers are going to help our team this year, next year, in pertaining to new teams, and then also getting back on winning ways. All right. Hopefully can't wait to hear from you. All right. Hopefully you can mention on air. All right. Merry Christmas, dude.
Merry Christmas to you as well, my friend. I appreciate the call. I appreciate the voicemail. So he's asking, how do I feel like South Carolina is going to fare next year, all the movement in the portal. Guys, I will actually, in the month of January, after the bowl games have concluded, we'll do a way too early predictions segment of content where I'll go through and predict and preview and lock in my predictions, way too early predictions for the 2024 season, for not just South Carolina, but the entire SEC as well. You know, I think that looking way too far ahead, right? When you look at South Carolina's 2024 season, you first look at the schedule. It's difficult, as it always is. You've got a young quarterback in Lenoris Sellers. You have to replace your top wide receiver, and you have to replace your top running back. Now, granted, you've answered that, I think, for the most part, in the transfer portal, at least at the running back position with Rocket Sanders. Obviously, losing Juice Wells was a big loss, guys. Let's call it what it is. That was a massive loss, and I think Juice Wells is going to flourish in Oxford. You know, I think defensively you added some nice pieces from the portal. I think Kyle Kennard and DeAndre Jules up front, I think those are positive additions on the defensive front. You brought back a lot of your top defensive talent as well. Debo Williams, Tonka Hemingway, Alex Huntley also. Of course, Jelon Kilgore, Nicky Manwari, all those guys are back. So the defense should be able to take a step forward as well. But again, guys, I think you look at that schedule. I think you look at what South Carolina has coming back on the offensive line. They should get better. The question will be how much better. And then a young quarterback that, guys, there's a lot of reason to be hype and excited about Lenoris Sellers. But the fact of the matter is this. His lone game action has come against Furman and Vanderbilt. It's going to hit different when he's on the road in his first road start against Kentucky. It's going to hit different when he's on the road at Alabama, at Oklahoma, when he's facing Ole Miss, when he's facing LSU. So let's see what South Carolina gets. Can he be as good as Spencer Rattler was for South Carolina? The greater question, of guys, is can the rest of the team around him be better? And so with that being said, my friend, again, I appreciate the voicemail. I think you look at it, guys, I think getting to 7-5 or better, I think that's the goal. I think that's the expectation because, guys, there's 4 built-in wins. 4 built-in wins on the schedule next year. There's 4 built-in wins, right? You've got Old Dominion, Akron, Wofford, and Vanderbilt. Those should all 4 be wins. So you got 8 other games. You got to go 2-6 in those 8 games to make a bowl game. 2-6 in those 8 games. There's no excuse for South Carolina not to, at minimum, go 2-6. Now, where do the other wins come from? Do you beat Kentucky for the 3rd straight year? Do you finally snap that streak against Missouri late in the season? Do you take down a Texas A&M team that's got a first-year head coach at Willie B? Do you pull an upset against a Clemson on the road, a Bama, an Oklahoma, maybe an Ole Miss or an LSU? You got to find 2 more wins. I think, guys, it's a very, very safe bet to pick South Carolina somewhere in the 5-7 to 7-5 range. I think 6-6 might be the number for the Gamecocks in 2024. Now, we'll see. There's still a lot that can change with rosters, additions, subtractions, whatever it might be, with not just the Gamecocks, but other teams across the SEC as well. But I think that's the early projection. I will be, guys, admittedly, I'll say this. I saw it in 2022, and I saw it in 2023, where, there were a lot of people, it felt like, on social media, the 10-win brigade that really felt like 10 wins was in the cards for South Carolina. I'll be really surprised if we see any of that this offseason. I think even the most optimistic of Gamecock, even the most garnet glasses of Gamecock, I think the 2023 season took something out of them. I think the 2023 season, guys, there was so much hype and there was so much buildup, right? And for it to fall as flat as it did, I think there's a lot of people that are probably gonna tone it back just a little bit until they have reason to buy in again. We'll put it that way. Fireball says, truly disappointed that Tennessee doesn't play the Gamecocks next year. That is weird, isn't it, Fireball? He also says Rattler could only win 5. I don't see how y'all get to 7 unless the rest of the team is greatly improved. Well, that's the thing, Fireball. The rest of the team's got to be greatly improved. The rest of the team has to be greatly improved. Cameron Blassingame. So McGowan is staying in IL situation. I haven't seen anything on McGowan lately, Cameron. If you can learn me something, I haven't seen anything new. He also says, I missed the big announcement. Can somebody fill me in? You have not missed it, Cameron. We'll get to it in about 10 minutes or so. About 10 minutes or so. Fireball, who you pulling for in the playoffs? I'm going to be rooting for Washington. I hate the rest of the teams. Fireball, I don't know that I'm really pulling for anybody. I think as someone with SEC interests, seeing Bama and Texas in it would be selfishly, that would be a lot of fun. That would be great from a content perspective as well. So that, Fireball, if I had to be honest with you, admittedly, that's probably the matchup I'd like to see. I get totally why you don't want to see either one of those teams, especially not Alabama. But, I'm not necessarily going into those games pulling for one team or the other. I just can't wait to watch some great football. I think those are 2 games that are going to be great games. Really, truly great games. So, Andrew the Textbook says, keeping moving through your questions, he says, we're asking Santa for a good offensive line. Yeah, I think many Gamecocks are. Let's see. Let's go back through some of these questions earlier in the show. Chat was getting kind of sideways here early. All good, though. Let's see. All right, let's go ahead. We got another voicemail here. Let's jump into this.
Hey, Chris, man, it's Dale, man. I just want to call in and say it, because nobody else is, apparently, man. I ain't forgot. Happy birthday, man. Happy early birthday, man. I know you born on baby Jesus' birthday, man. That's huge, man. You might not be as quite as important as him, but, man, I'm thankful for you, man. Glad to see you gonna be wrapped up under somebody's Christmas tree, man, to open up on Christmas Day / your birthday, man. So, hey, man, I'm just happy for you. Happy 43rd birthday, Chris, man. Can't wait to exchange presents with you this weekend. and eat cookies and drink some milk. Anyway, man, BDD out, holding it down up here in East Tennessee, man. BDD out.
BDD, Merry Christmas to you and yours, and thank you, my friend, for the birthday wishes. 43rd is a little harsh, though. I'll be 33, just to set the record straight, which feels crazy to say because I don't feel a day over 21, but, you know, it is what it is. It's all about how you feel, not the number, right? Either way, BDD, you're the man. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. What a legend. What a legend. I can't imagine what an East Tennessee Christmas is like. You know what I mean? Like, I wonder what an East Tennessee Christmas is like up there in the Tennessee mountains. Tucker Hamilton, bench rat, fires. R.I.P. What a glorious time that was, man. What a glorious time that was. Tuck, you rips. Y'all keep ripping, man. I appreciate y'all. KC says, it always happens. We go into a season with no expectations. We do good. With expectations, we don't. Always has been that way, except Spurrier in 2010 to 2013. Yeah, I mean, it's, you know. Well, I think more so what it is, though, KC, I think more so what it is that when you go into a season with no expectations, even if you, like, miss the expectations by – or if you go into a season with lower expectations, if you miss the expectations by a game – it doesn't feel like it's that big of a deal because the expectations weren't all that high to begin with. But when you have really high expectations, like even missing it by a game or two, it really, really stings. You know what I mean? It really stings. And so, I mean, guys, listen, I'll reiterate. I'll reiterate what I said back during the season that, you know, somebody asked me, Chris, like, what do you do? How do we not let ourselves, or how do we not get so let down and hurt? And, you know, guys, my answer to that is you keep realistic expectations. Like, you move forward as much as it may pain you as a fan. I know for some folks, it's really tough because what happens, I get it, guys. You get into the summer, that fandom starts to kick in, right? We're all so excited for football. We're doing 100 days till kickoff, countdown, what have you, and people are so amped up for it, and they let their emotions run wild and their dreams run crazy, and that's one of the great parts of the preseason, right? That's one of the great parts of the offseason, quote unquote, is that everybody's 0-0. Everybody's dreams are still a reality. Everybody's dreams are still out there. You can dream as big as you want, and it could come to fruition. But I implore for Gamecock Nation, man, listen. And which as I drop the mouse here, you being realistic, okay? Because there's this narrative out there that, man, based off what I say is how the team performs. You being realistic does not stop South Carolina from achieving what they want to achieve. Guys, you being realistic just protects your own emotions as a fan. It just protects your own sanity as a fan. So, guys, moving forward with Gamecocks football, what I would encourage Gamecock fans to do, go into show me mode. Go into show me mode, man. Go into show me mode. Like make Gamecock Nation prove it. Or make Gamecock football prove it, excuse me. Gamecock Nation has nothing to prove. All they've done is show up for over 100 years. Make Gamecocks football prove it to you. You know what I mean? Like, when you think about the history of South Carolina football, like, you probably wouldn't be so quick to predict a 9-win season or a 10-win season. Like, because it's not, it just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. You know? Make them prove it. Blake Queen in the Discord says, if we expect to do any better than 5 wins, we're shooting for the stars. Better will be great. Worse will be a huge failure. I mean, I think the goal, yeah, Blake, to your point, I think the goal in 2024 is really simple. Just get to a bowl game. Just get to a bowl game. That's it. Just get back to a bowl game. That's it. Anything more than that, 7 or more, is golden. But you got to get to 6. You have to get to 6. You have to get to 6. Let's see. Will you be going to Norman or Tuscaloosa this year? What games are you most looking forward to in 2024? I will be in Norman or Tuscaloosa more than likely at some point. What games I'm most looking forward to? I mean, dude, On the South Carolina schedule specifically, those games at Bama, at Oklahoma are cool. I think the home games are really intriguing. LSU, Ole Miss, trying to snap the streak against Missouri. The game at Clemson, always a game you look forward to. So definitely. Fire Vol says, coming from Tennessee, the floor is 4 wins, ceiling is 9, depending on heart. Is that for Tennessee or for South Carolina? Let's see. We got a voicemail here. Let's jump into it. Let's see. All right, here we go. Go ahead and jump into this.
Hey, Chris, it's Merry Christmas to you. All I want for Christmas is meet Spitzweather and Inch Cheerleaders. No injuries. I just want our team to get SC title one day. And that's it. Go Gamecocks.
I love that. Appreciate you, my man. We also got a couple texts here. Texter says, what up, Chris? It's Robbie Davis. What I would love to have for Christmas is for South Carolina to have a decent offensive and defensive line this coming season. Go Gamecocks. He says, another thing I want for Christmas is for my Pittsburgh Steelers to get a win because it's been a minute since they've gotten a win. Steeler Nation is struggling right now. Travis said he's going to the Oklahoma game. Love that. Let's see. Just reading to you guys questions, comments, everything else. Fireball says, I truly believe that South Carolina could shock the world if you play harder than every team you face. Okay, well, I hope that happens. Truly. Guys, okay, let's see. Blake Queen in the Discord. Schedule's absolutely brutal. Freshman quarterback, not a good wide receiver corps, and a questionable O-line. No doubt, Blake, there will be questions for South Carolina going into the 2024 season. Okay, guys, with that being said, like I mentioned to you all, a major announcement, the biggest announcement ever in the history of the Spurs Up Show, of my lifetime as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. And there was a reason why, guys, a couple of days ago, specifically to Travi, that I told you guys that I'm not going to insult your intelligence. I think for some of you out there, this is going to be a very obvious thing that I'm about to say. Many of you probably have put 2 and 2 together and followed along and pieced the clues together. Some of you, this may catch by surprise, and there will be more regarding this decision, more about what this means next week. But the announcement, guys, is that this is the last Daily Crow ever. This is the last time ever that we will go live as the Spurs Up Show. And again, I know for some of you, that's something you were expecting to hear. I know for some of you, that is a really abrupt thing. And, I was fine all week. I was fine this morning. I was fine throughout the show. But obviously these last 10 or 15 minutes, it's the emotions are running. And not because I'm not thrilled and excited about what's to come in regards to my entrepreneurial journey, in regards to my journey as a content creator, in regards to my journey building an entity, the biggest and best entity I possibly can. But just because I can't help but think back over the years in regards to what the Daily Crow started as and what it has become. And I wanted to share this news, guys. Obviously, this is not out on social media. This will be. We will be dropping a teaser graphic tomorrow, which I guess I really haven't even gotten into the announcement. But again, this is the last Daily Crow ever. And the reason that is, and this is the last live stream of the Spurs Up Show ever, and the reason for that is that we will be officially rebranding and relaunching under the name SEC Unfiltered next week. So the Spurs Up Show will be no more. It will be SEC Unfiltered moving forward. Date will be released tomorrow when we drop the official teaser graphic, and you guys will know we will go live on that day, and there will be a full welcome to SEC Unfiltered show. And I'll explain more behind the decision making and why we're doing this and why I'm so excited for it, and what this means for me and as a content creator. We're going to continue to go live. Make no mistake, daily live show is going to still exist. We're still going to be here noon to 2. But again, this is the last time the Daily Crow will ever air. This is the last time we'll air live as the Spurs Up Show. The next time we go live we will be SEC Unfiltered. And again, guys, I'm sure you could pick up on that over the last couple of weeks where we've been leaning a lot more heavily in the SEC content and talking all things SEC. And this is something for, guys, simply put, my goals and aspirations and dreams and visions as an entrepreneur, as a content creator, this is something I've been meditating on for almost 2 years now, and it's something I knew we'd come to a point where it would become a reality, and it finally is. And I'm ecstatic. I'm stoked. I'm really, truly, genuinely excited, guys. I'll always be a Gamecock. I'll always be a South Carolina guy. I got nothing but love for South Carolina. That goes without saying. But this next step has always been in my crosshairs, and it's always been something that I've wanted to do, and I'm ecstatic and can't wait for it. So, again, I think back over the last couple of years, guys. I mean, this journey. I mean, you think back, the Daily Crow started as I was at my 9-to-5 job in Charlotte back in, and if you remember these days, you're an OG, right? And I have mad respect for you. But I mean, the Daily Crow guy started as, I think it was like 2018, maybe. I was at my 9-to-5 job, and on my lunch break, I'd go like 5 minutes down the road to a park that was just down the road. And I had a little tripod and I had my phone, and I would stream via Periscope. It wasn't a daily show then. It was just a 10 to 15 minute blurb, you know what I mean? Where I would just kind of go live and talk about whatever the topic was, right? It may have been a game recap. It may have been a preview of something. It may have been just an opinion of something, whatever it might be. But I was in my corporate, golf shirt, and I was wearing a golf hat sometimes. Like, I was just a dude, and we were very, very small at that point. Maybe I had 1,000 followers. Like, I think we had just hit 1,000. Like, we were very small. And then so to see that, and then the Daily Crow became when I, first embarked on the TSUS journey, really moved to New York for the summer. I was doing the Daily Crow as like a YouTube segment, right? We were doing position unit previews and stuff like that. And so that's what the Daily Crow was. And there was no live show segment, although when I moved to Columbia in August of 2019 to pursue TSUS full time, I knew that I wanted to do that, right? I always thought what Paul Feinbaum did was so cool, right? Having a daily live show where you interacted with callers and commenters and guests and what have you. And so we did that. And it actually started, guys, believe it or not, it was very inconsistent early 2020. Then we did, if you remember this, again, it really will show you've been following for a long time. We did Rowdy Rooster Radio over the summer of 2020, and we didn't know if we're going to have football and all that. Then we find out we're going to have sports. And game week of the first game of the 2020 season, so probably like mid to late September, that was the birth of at least the infrastructure of the Daily Crow as you know it now. And the growth and evolution of it from that point, guys, we started out as an hour, noon to 1. There were no breaks, right? We would take calls, me holding my phone up to the microphone and going from noon to 1 to a year later, we started doing noon to 2. Just kind of an open-ended show, nothing but questions, comments, and calls. And then from that to 2022, we kept that same format. Then we had daily guests, right? We used to have no guests at all. It was just us going back and forth. Then we started daily guests. Then we finally got the plug-in for the interface to make calls come in like a professional show or whatever. Then we went to 3 hours, right? Then we changed up the formatting and the way we presented content and ran through topics, then had a daily mailbag or a Q&A power hour. Then we shifted. So it's just really cool looking back, all of the 10x jumps, if you will. And I'm reading a book right now, 10x is easier than 2x. And it talks about making 10x jumps versus 2x jumps. And we've made so many 10x jumps, not just in the Daily Crow, right? But the Daily Crow is like a microcosm of the way that we've continued to evolve and grow and make these monumental jumps in business, if you will. And so that's exactly what we're doing here. Again, it's big news that the Daily Crow won't be a thing anymore. The Daily Crow, this is the last one ever. But we're still going to go live. The bigger news, I think, is that this is the last live stream and this is the final days of the Spurs Up Show. The Spurs Up Show will be no more in its current existence. Now, Cameron Blasingame asked about merch. Again, this is stuff that will all be addressed next week when we go live for the first time as SEC Unfiltered. But the Spurs Up show, what I'm planning on is keeping it still as an online storefront. So technically, that'll still be like tsus.store, the spursupshow.com will still exist. But in regards to this entity will no longer be the Spurs Up show. The live show, though, to Xavier's point, will still be noon to 2. A lot of the way, guys, we make content's going to stay the same. A lot of the way we have been making content. Again, guys, over the last month or so, you have seen us talk far more SEC content than we ever had, to a point where people have gotten annoyed by it, right? People are like, why is he talking about? That's been by design. That's been by design to make the transition as seamless as possible. And Gavin asked the question about, will it be on this channel separate? So, Gavin, to answer your question, because that is a great question, everything you currently see as the Spurs Up show will be rebranded and relaunched to SEC Unfiltered. So, again, guys, it's a move that I know many of you were expecting. Like I said, many of you were kind of saw it coming. I'm sure some of you are caught by surprise. And again, we'll talk about this a lot more, guys, next week when the rebrand, the relaunch actually happens. But I'm so excited, honestly, that I've been keeping this to myself for so long. And it's something that, while it isn't an emotion, it's emotional to an era to come to an end, guys. I mean, honestly, again, it's something I've been meditating on for so long, nearly 2 years. And it's something where, I've kind of done all my processing behind the scenes, and the emotions that come with the end of an era, they're admittedly overshadowed by my excitement, my anticipation, just how ecstatic I am at the start of a new era. Really, truly, guys. So I can't say thank you enough. I mean, again, everything, you guys don't have to subscribe to a new place, nothing like that. Where you are right now, this will be SEC Unfiltered. Everything that's currently the Spurs Up show will be SEC Unfiltered. And so, again, I will explain a lot more next week. You guys will see the teaser graphic come out tomorrow in regards to when this new era will begin. But, guys, I wanted to share this with you all first, okay? I wanted to share this with you all first because, I value all of our audience. All of our audience is fantastic. All of our audience is great. I can't say thank you enough. From those that support on the podcast, social media, buying the merchandise, the live show, whatever it might be. But our live show audience, the people that tune in, day out, there is a different relationship, right? I mean, I think we can all agree. There's a different, we know each other, it feels like. Like, we really know each other. And I really, genuinely hope, the people that have tuned into this show for 3 years, for 2 years, however long, they continue to do so. Because the good news, guys, the Gamecocks are in the SEC, right? We're going to be talking all things SEC. But I genuinely hope those people stick around because, guys, the relationship that we have built together, the relationship we've built, it's cool, man. I mean, I really feel like, we interact with each other. It started out certainly because we love talking Gamecocks and we're all fans of the Gamecocks. But I feel like at this point it goes beyond that. And so I really can't say thank you enough to you guys. And again, that's why, I wanted to share this with you all first before it ever came out on social media, before anything was released, if you will. So again, the big news, the final Daily Crow is officially in the books. The final live stream of the Spurs Up show is officially in the books. This journey that started way back in January of 2017, November of 2018 when we got the LLC, August of 2019 when I moved to Columbia, has now culminated in this. Where we are transitioning into a new era. And I couldn't be more excited, guys. I couldn't be more ecstatic. Again, I'll share more about that, what it entails. There's going to be a public Discord for SEC Unfiltered. There's going to be merchandise. Again, I will share and dive into all the details, everything I'm mentioning right now next week. But It's been a journey, man. It's been a hell of a journey. It's been a cool journey, man. I just, and without you guys, I've said it many times. I'll say it again. TSUS, me as a content creator, me as an entrepreneur, me as an entity, would not be what it is, would not be what it has been, would not be what it is. It would not be what it is becoming and what it's about to become without your love and support. Truly, truly. You guys mean the world. I appreciate each and every single one of you. I can't say thank you enough. Truly. So thank you all so much for tuning in, guys. Be sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Hit that bell icon so you get notifications of when we go live, when we drop new video content as well. Again, make sure you lock in right here. This is where you're going to want to be. Also, guys, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, check us out there. Again, that's the feed you're going to want to be on. And then on social media, where we currently are right now, that's where you're going to want to be as well. Guys, Merry Christmas, by the way, to each and every single one of you. Happy New Year. We will talk before the new year. Granted, it will not be as the Spurs Up Show. It'll be as SEC Unfiltered. And again, I'm so excited for the beginning of that journey. I'm so excited to 10X, to continue to 10X in our entrepreneurial journey and our content journey and my life journey. And the beautiful thing is, guys, the beauty will always be in the banter. And we always will do it together. That's the great thing. Truly. I'm excited. I'm excited beyond words, without a doubt. So, guys, appreciate you all tuning in again. Merry Christmas to each and every single one of you. Merry Christmas to you and yours. I hope Santa Claus brings everything that you ask him for. And for the final time, I am Chris Phillips of the Daily Crow of the Spurs Up Show. Y'all have a great weekend. Y'all have a Merry Christmas. And we'll see you on the other side.